Hi folks. A few days ago I went off in a little rant about Walmart hiking their prices up due to the pandemic. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll post a quick link here so you can click on and go over and watch it. Long story short though, they haven't changed their practices, so I still can't in good faith recommend that you buy anything from Walmart. However, as we get further into the spring, I do realize that people are looking for laptops for graduation gifts, and also because we're all still working online, people are looking for laptops for their own reasons. So I decided to do a set of quick picks based upon sort of what I think the best set of laptops for different use cases on Amazon right now are. So I'll go ahead and kick it off. Now, these are just my recommendations. You might be able to find better prices. You might be able to find a similar system configured the same way for maybe a little bit better price on Best Buy or something, but this was sort of a quick list for me to put together just to give you some idea of what I would recommend. Now, if price is your biggest criteria, you can't go wrong going with an HP Stream. Now, unfortunately, they used to have both 11-inch and 14-inch HP Streams, but lately I've only seen the 14-inch, and I think you will find 11-inch Streams for sale, of course, on Amazon, but they tend to be older models. They're using older chips, so I couldn't recommend going with an 11-inch HP Stream. Excuse me. But this 14-inch right here seems to be relatively recent. It's got a Celeron N4000, which is a decent chip. Comes with 4 gig of RAM, which is sort of the minimum we require. And it comes with 64 gig of storage. Now, this is not an SSD. This is an eMMC. And I've got videos elsewhere on the channel where we talk about the different types of storage and everything. But it's faster than, an old-style spinning hard drive. Now, the downside of this, first of all, what you see is sort of what you get. This thing is not going to go into tent mode like some of the other more pricier laptops we'll talk about in just a second. And it does have a relatively thick bezel around the screen. Likewise, sorry, I don't know why Honey keeps wanting to price up and tell me something. Likewise, it does have a relatively low resolution screen, 1366 by 768, but to be honest, that's going to be pretty common to almost all the laptops we're going to look at. That's a common sort of entry-level laptop size screen, and some manufacturers, notably Lenovo, use it on even sort of mid-tier machines. Now, you're not going to get USB-C, which are the new connectors that a lot of new cell phones use. You will have a couple of USB 3.1s. Nice thing is it comes with a media reader that'll take an SD card. It's got headphone and microphone jack built in. Don't be misled by it saying that there's 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage. That's cloud storage. This thing only comes with 64 gig built in. You cannot upgrade the RAM, you can't upgrade the storage here, but luckily you can add sort of a dedicated little SD card in the SD card slot if you need extra storage. On a machine like this, I would put movies or something on that SD card, stuff you're not going to access that often, and if you do access, you basically are comfortable waiting a second or two for it to load. Other than that, this is a pretty basic machine. Now, there is a link down here that says, ooh, there's a new model. I wouldn't buy that new model, and not just because of the price differential, but to be honest, as I've also discussed elsewhere on the channel, the AMD A-series processors are not great. They are far older technology than the new Ryzen-based processors that AMD has come out with. So I would not go with an AMD A9 chip. It's not very fast, and to be honest, it's a power hog. So this is the best bet, right? And at $219.99 or $220, it's a decent laptop. You're not going to be disappointed. It is pretty rugged, but like I said, it doesn't fold in tent mode, and it's a little bit bulky. Now, if you want something sort of this same level of quality, and you're looking for something that'll give you about the same processor and about the same RAM and about the same storage, but you're looking for something that'll fold, even though HP did away with the 11-inch streams, they seem to have come out with this, the 11-inch X360, and their X360 line are meant to fold. So this thing does fold, but once again, we see here really thick border around the screen, right? So this thing's going to look clunky. Obviously, you can use it as a regular laptop. It is, I think, intended for students, so it's a little bit rugged construction. It's got like an exterior that's going to hold up well. In terms of ports, looks like it has a USB-A on that side, and it does appear to have a USB-C on this side, in addition to a USB-A, I think HDMI, and even an Ethernet jack. Now, the one thing I will say is that I did some research on this USB-C Type-C. I don't know that you can charge it off this. You can see on the back there it has a barrel connector for a charger. So I suspect that you might be able to charge other devices from this, right? It's intended, you're a student, you're in school, you need to charge your cell phone. You can do so off of your laptop. It also will allow for faster data transfer than the USB-C 3 normal USB ports. But I haven't been able to find a definitive answer in terms of whether you can charge off of this USB-C port, so I would not count on it. It's a little bit pricier, obviously, than the HP Stream, but if you're willing to pay, like, what is it? So we were talking $220 versus $338. So if you're willing to pay like $118 more, you'll get a smaller form factor. That is, it's an 11-inch instead of the 14-inch that the HP Stream was. And it will be able to fold, for instance, in tent mode. And, you know, would I go for this machine? Maybe. If I was buying it for a student that also wanted to use this, say, for watching Netflix and stuff like that, having the tent mode is really, really handy. The other thing I will say is that both of these machines, the 14-inch Stream and the 11-inch ProBook X360, they're both designed for students, so they're both built really sturdily. To be honest, I get the feeling just from copies of these I've seen before, this one might be even sturdier just because they over-manufactured it, realizing that people were going to be folding it in strange ways, if you will. But I think that both of these machines are really, really sturdy. The downside, though, is the big bezels around the screen and the fact that, you know, it's a little bit chunky. Now, if you did not need the sort of foldability, if you weren't worried about tent mode, and you wanted something that maybe was a little bit more upscale and did not have these atrociously big bezels around it, I would think something along the lines of this Lenovo. Now, it will not fold into tent mode, but it does have a much thinner set of bezels around the screen. It comes with a slightly faster processor, the Celeron 4205 instead of the Celeron 4000, and I think that the primary difference is that the base clock speed is a little bit higher. They both sort of max out around the same boost, but the base clock is, I think, 1.8 on this, whereas I want to say it was like 1.1 on the N4000. Yep, 1.1 base. So it's a little bit faster. Also has 4 gig of RAM. I don't know. I think that you might be able to upgrade it. It does come with an SSD, whereas both of these came with eMMC. So an SSD is faster, and I also think that you could probably, please go away. I think that you could also probably upgrade that SSD as well. This at around $328 is pretty much, you know, right at the same price, maybe a little bit cheaper than the foldable X360. But I think it's, for most of us, the fact that it's a 15.6-inch screen, now it's still 1366 by 768 resolution. Lenovo is stuck with that for a while. But it's going to be a bigger screen, thinner bezels. You also get a keyboard that has a numeric keypad on the side, and unlike most 11-inch laptops, I think you'll find that there's some accommodations they have to make for the keyboard here, right, to fit everything in. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see, but it looks like the up and down arrows over there are like little half keys, right? Whereas here, still the same thing. You still get half keys, but maybe a little bit better sizing, spacing, and everything. So if I wanted something that looked more professional, if I wanted something, and this has a fairly decent exterior finish, The newer, last couple of years, the Lenovo machines have a nicely understated logo on the lid. It's going to be a plastic lid, but it'll look fairly nice. Now this thing will lie flat, and for whatever reason, I've got several teenagers myself. They like that. They like standing up and looking down at their machine versus sitting at it. But it will not fold backwards. It won't fold into tent mode. But if you're willing, to put up with something that won't fold into tent mode, be a little bit bigger, maybe upgradable, certainly faster both in processor, faster in SSD, have some more storage capabilities, this is the way I would go. And then finally, in terms of Windows machines, all of these that we've looked at so far have been Celeron machines. If I was going to go for a little bit more horsepower, I'd have to pay a little bit more, but I'd probably go for this machine right here, the Azuz Vivo Book 15. Now it's about the same size, and if anything, the bezels on this guy are even smaller relative to the screen size than the bezels were over here on the Lenovo laptop. But it comes with an R5. That is a newer AMD chip. It's a Ryzen R5. It's about the same speed as an Intel i5 processor. This has a enhanced, if you will, graphics capability, so it can play low-level games fairly well. We've talked about this also on the channel before. Comes with 8 gig of RAM. To be honest, though, the graphic processing will take a little bit of that, so you're probably going to go from the equivalent of around 4 gig to 6 gig of usable with this, because about 2 gig is usually reserved for things like the graphics. But you'll have more RAM, you'll have twice as much storage, and it's a faster PCIe SSD, whereas I think, don't hold me to it, but I think this Lenovo probably comes with like a SATA SSD, which is still a lot faster than the eMMC, but it's this PCIe SSD is going to be sort of the fastest technology. You can buy a version of it with an i3 chip, and I don't know, that version's even more expensive. I would stick with the Ryzen 5 because it's the equivalent of an Intel i5. I've been really happy with Azuz notebooks I've had in the past. Now, looking at the side of this, you've got 2 USB-A's over on the left side, and is that right? Yeah, so it's just showing us, there we go. And it looks like you've got, again, a barrel connector, USB-C, and an HDMI, in addition to an SD card slot and what looks like a microphone headphone jack. Sorry for the honey pop-ups. I don't know why it is intent on doing that today. It normally doesn't bother me quite that much. But anyways, if you wanted to go up to close to $500, this machine would probably be the best way to go. Now, everything we've talked about so far has been a Windows machine, and since I'm a business professor, I highly recommend Windows machines over both Chrome machines and, to be honest, over Apple products. Most of the software that you're going to use as a business student will run on a Mac, but some of it won't. In particular, there's certain features built into Excel and so forth. So I would recommend, particularly if you're buying it for a college student or if you're a business person yourself, I would recommend sticking with one of the Windows machines that we've identified so far. Now, if you are buying it for a school student, in particular if their school uses the Google suite of online office applications, or if you're, a business person and you use Google exclusively, you don't really use Microsoft Excel and those kinds of programs, you might want to think about a Chromebook. Now, the nice thing about a Chromebook is that you can focus more on sort of the functionality, the foldability, for instance, and the screen, and less on the processor power and storage, because you don't really need those as much. So if I was buying this for somebody that wasn't going to be using it, professionally, or as a student attending classes someplace where they're focused on Windows, I would think about, at the low level, I'd look at this Acer machine right here. Now, it is an Acer Spin 11, so it is a 2-in-1, which means it folds into tent mode. I don't know why the picture here doesn't show it. has a slightly slower Celeron than the N4000 we were looking at with Windows machines, but to be honest, that's not going to matter so much on a Chromebook. It's about as clunky as that X360 we were looking at, but this is probably my go-to cheap foldable Chromebook. If you had a little bit more to spend, I would definitely think about this one right here. Now, seems weird to pay sort of more for a Chromebook than you actually would for some of the Windows machines. This thing is all metal body. It comes with USB-C charging. It also has an Intel Core M3, which is like a mobile version of an i3. Not quite as strong, but these things are meant to last a long time on a charge. This thing's really sturdy. I've actually got one of these, bought it a couple of years ago, I think, and it's really, really a nice machine. And for folding and watching it in tent mode, you can't beat it. So again, if you were not needing Windows software, this would probably be the best one that I would recommend to get. They've also got M5 and M7 versions going up in price. I have a hard time, finding anything, even playing games and so forth, on a Chromebook that an M3 won't handle magnificently. Now, this thing has a 12.5-inch touchscreen, and again, if you're buying it for a kid, if you're a younger person, it does come with a fairly decent resolution. Most of these Azuz Chromebooks actually come with 1920 x 1080. Let's check real quick and see if it says down here. Yep, 1920 x 1080. So this is going to have a higher resolution screen. Videos and so forth are going to look a lot more watchable on it. It does have a little bit of a bezel around it, not as bad as some of the real clunkier, cheaper machines that we looked at. Now, this though is a 12.5-inch screen. If, for whatever reason, you're buying it for an older person and they're going to use it for business and so forth, they might prefer a larger screen where they can see more things on the screen at a time. Practically the same machine, but in a 14-inch machine, is the Azuz Chromebook Flip 434. This also does the tent mode, right? And you notice that their graphic images are very similar. You can get it either with 4 gig of RAM and 64 gig of storage, or 8 gig of RAM and 64 gig of storage. I'm sure that they're going to come out with Chrome OS games and so forth that would benefit from 8 gig of storage, but all the Chromebooks I've ever used have 4 gig, and I have no problems with them. So for about the same price, looks like you could find it probably new for just a little bit over $500. So about the same price as this Flip C302, you can get a larger screen with a much smaller, relatively speaking, bezel in the C434. Now, again, I apologize for all the honey ads popping up. I'm going to disable that thing. But I hope this has been informative. So just to summarize, I gave you 4 choices, going from least expensive to more expensive, and talking about the trade-offs in it in using a Windows machine. And for most people, if this is going to be your only machine, I would think about going Windows. There's lots of software you can run on Windows that you just simply can't run on a Chromebook. But if you're looking for a device that you're more a consumer of videos and pictures and web browsing and so forth, a Chromebook would work fine. And I give you 3 choices there. We've got the Acer Spin 11, we've got the Azuz C302 2-in-1 Flip, and we've got the Azuz C434 2-in-1, also a flip. I hope this has been helpful. If so, please press the like button, and if you get a chance to subscribe to the channel, we'd really appreciate it. Take care.